This material is made available to you by or on behalf of the University of Melbourne under Section 113P of the Copyright Act 1968. It may be subject to copyright. For more information, visit the University Copyright website.
Okay, while my PowerPoint is still loading, maybe I can ask who of you are from property discipline? 4, 5, 6, and 7, planning? Okay, so for those of you who haven't put your hand up, from which discipline are you from?
Landscape architecture.
Great. How about you? Property. Anyone from other?
Instructional management.
Okay, good. Fantastic. So this year have a more diverse cohort than last year. Last year is dominated by property students. Okay. So I think we are supposed to start 9:10. So the recording start working at that time. Do you all know each other? I know? No? Okay, maybe quickly say hi to your neighbors, introduce your name. Yeah, we are going to be together for 12 weeks. Yeah, quickly warm up a little bit. And where is my sign-in sheet? Oh yes, to clarify, this Christmas I haven't been back to China, so don't worry, I'm definitely not a carrier of the just to confirm, and I will ask a question this class then in 4 weeks time. So if you have been in China, do you encouraged to stay at home for 14 days before coming to class, just for everybody's safety. Okay. Okay. Good. So introduce myself. I'm Julie Miao. This is my second year in Melbourne University. I graduated from University College London, Economic Geography and Planning, supervised by, I don't know whether planning students know, Professor Sir Peter Ho, who is the most famous planner in the UK. I think he passed away 5 or 6 years ago. And then I start work in St Andrews University in Scotland. It's where Prince and Princess met each other, William and Kate met each other. So that's regarded as the kind of a royal posh university in the UK. For the royal family, if you cannot go to Oxford or Cambridge, you go to St Andrews. And then I got my first lectureship in Glasgow University, which was ranked first in built environment and planning in the UK. And then I joined Melbourne University in 2018. So I'm pretty new here, only maybe 1 year. You are second year or fourth year? Second year. Oh, so almost same as me. Okay, so this is kind of my research area. So although it's an elective, I do put a lot of energy to prepare this class. And as you can see from the handbook, I do bring in a lot of guest lecturers who can share their expertise with us. In the first session, I will spend around half an hour or so, introduce the course outline, the assessment, and other issues I want you to be aware of. So, questions beforehand? I do this last year because this is a morning session. Quite challenging for me to get my mind clear. So, have some questions to warm us up. First one is, what is knowledge economy when you're choosing this subject? Do you have a definition? And how can knowledge economy related to your discipline? Here I don't have landscape architecture, but I'm quite happy to hear your thought on this. Okay, so I will give you about 2-3 minutes. Have a think about it. If you want, you can write down a piece of paper. There are quite a lot of writing down exercise throughout the class. So if anyone need a piece of paper, okay. And get prepared. I do have your name here. This is a terrible classroom. I just look at you guys all the way up. I will stand up. Basically, your definition, you don't need to look at Google, have a quick search or anything. How about you? What do you think? How would you define knowledge economy? What's your name?
Very important.
Okay. What's your definition for knowledge economy? Why do you choose this subject?
I think that we related to my intentions degree, like we did this.
I see. Wow. I might touch a little bit on business management, but not too much. Sorry. It's quite geography and economics oriented, I think. So how about you? What's your name?
Perry.
Okay.
I'm doing the planning, so
Good.
from that discipline, I suppose. I think just in terms of the actual words themselves, things like maybe the trading of information.
Trading of information.
Yeah. So in the sense that information is kind of power in the sense that the more information you have, the better decisions you can make and the greater ability to grow.
Yeah, but we better describe that as information economy, isn't it? Think about what knowledge economy. Maybe the knowledge term is wider than just information,
Sure.
isn't it? And how about you?
What's the definition?
No, the second question. How about what do you think?
Because I'm the property student, so maybe the property development, we can use the knowledge economy to manage the process of the development, and it could be more efficient.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good answer.
I think.
Okay, so how about you? Give me a definition on knowledge economy.
I guess as I'm a property student, and I think like the knowledge is about I'm not very sure about it.
Doesn't matter. I think next week maybe we will be better, more prepared for my warm-up questions. There are always some warm-up questions here. Anyone else? Any of you here want to share with us? Go ahead. What's your name? Sorry.
My name is Mukul. I'm planning student.
Okay.
So knowledge economy is where the share of knowledge is directly proportional to the growth of economy. More you share, more better would be the economy.
Okay, that's the closest definition I've heard in the class. Very good. How about the second one?
I'm not sure about property and other things, but it is bit related to planning, since planning is a growth of city and thereby the country itself. So planning process, if it involves knowledge economy, would develop the country with better economic achievements.
I think a better way of saying it is more like my understanding of how the industry structure changed. how the land use has been changing, being changed by knowledge economy will again influence how planning rules, planning system is being designed, isn't it? It's like, because planning is serving the land use. Yeah, different types of land use got to be put in different places. So with the transfer towards knowledge economy, what does it imply to land usage? And whether the established planning rules, planning regulations need to be reflected on the different land use. So that's
It could be other way also. Like planning could, with the planning process, we could plan to develop a knowledge economy.
yes, very good. Actually, in week 4, I think I will discuss how actually planning could support the growth of knowledge economy. Very good. Anyone else? Or shall I move on? Okay, so the overall objective of this class is to help you get understanding of the urban knowledge economy. God, I couldn't read it myself. That is how an urban development strategy that draws upon knowledge-intensive sectors and activities to understand the rationale behind it, the theories behind it, and what that influence our different disciplines. So related to that, I have 2 more objectives here. So, related with knowledge economy, we understand the theory, the economics, and the pattern, for example. And with all this essential knowledge, what we want to understand is, okay, how this change towards knowledge economy influence property sector, influence our existing planning system, landscape, for example. So how the transfer to knowledge economy influence all these existing disciplines, and worth-wise, how could our established market, real estate market dynamic, planning system, urban building environment, shifting influence the growth of knowledge economy. So it's like 3 key elements I want you to understand after this subject. Any question here? Good. So, to support my subject objective, we have 12 classes. I think I got to move to the other side. So the first one, this week, I will introduce the basics, especially what is knowledge economy, why it is important, and what are the key economic theories that try to explain the emerging of knowledge economy. This is objective of class 1. And toward the end, I will also point out why cities, urban areas, are important for the growth of knowledge economy. You can see there is actually a debate, especially in the context of Australia, for example, where we still have a huge suburb area, and in American as well. So there's always a debate where exactly knowledge economy happens. Is that in cities or in suburb area? Do we mean, when we focus on cities, do we actually rule out the possibility for suburbs to grow based on knowledge economy? So it's an open question here. I will leave it for you to think about further. After week 1, in next week, we will take a historical view to understand the evolution of our society, which will help you to understand the stage of different growth of different industries and different technologies. In particular, my focus will be on quadratic wave. Have anyone heard about it before? Okay, so strictly speaking, it is not a theory. It is an observation long-term observation, but this observation hasn't been proved wrong yet. So that's the dynamic with theory and empirical observation. We do research in order to prove something is wrong. We're not proving something is right. Okay? So that's why this Kretiev wave still holds its charmness to explain the cycles of economic growth and technology growth. So that's a historical perspective. Week 3, we go to a system level to understand how different actors, different agencies, different institutions interact with each other in order to better support the growth of innovation and knowledge diffuse. So some of the key actors involved in the system are universities, research institutions, entrepreneurs, companies, their suppliers, their customer, as well as a wider institutional system. So 2 models I will introduce. First is innovation system theory, and second is triple helix model. So you can say this is on a horizontal level, system level, to talk about innovation. Week 4. So by the end of week 3, we should get a macro level understanding of innovation. And week 4, we move to micro level to look at labor market, and in particular, the diversification within the labor market. Okay? So in the classic economic theory, we normally just talk about labor as a physical human being. You spend 8 hours in work, how much you can produce. There is a maximum level of output you can produce because of physical constraint. Okay? We are not God, so we cannot produce things unlimitedly. But with the growth of knowledge economy, there is a growing recognition that even within the labor pool, there are different types of labor that are contributing to the economy differently. In particular, I will introduce the term of new argonauts, who help to circulate the knowledge between developing and developed countries, and the rise of creative class, who earn their living with their creativity. And toward the end, we will discuss what are the implications for built environment, property, and planning. Okay, so labor. Level. Okay, so by any question now? Okay, so by the end of week 4, you should have a, well, not very in-depth, but at least a wide coverage of all the key theories related to non-economic. Week 5, no class. Very good. That's time for you to read and to prepare for your reflective writing. That's assignment 1. I think it's 1,000 or 500 words. 1,000. It's not a waste of time because you can reuse the material towards assignment 3. Okay, I don't mind. Okay, so do a very nice review and then develop it further towards assignment 3. So let's say week 5 is your writing skills. And after that, from week 6, 7, and 8, we will look at particular themes, because by then you have a theory needed. Now look at particular practice in the world that try to support the growth of non-economic. So week 6 is the growth of industrial parks, technopoles, technology parks, research parks, whatever you want to call it. And this is my PhD topic. So I think I will I don't quite remember now whether I will talk about my PhD or something else. And week 7, reading week. Week 8, we will move on to look at co-working space. And also co-working space is a key kind of group work topic I want you to develop. So in week 8, I have invited the owner of a co-working space based in Melbourne. So he will come to share with you his business model, his art of running co-working, and also the competitions currently facing. Week 9, we will talk about university and what universities rule in the development of knowledge economy and its relation with cities, with urban area. As you can see, a lot of the, especially the good university, actually occupy quite a big landscape in our cities. So their use of land and their activities will significantly shaping our urban dynamic as well. In the UK and some places in the US as well, one university could dominate the whole city's economic growth. A good example is Cambridge or Oxford. Have you been there before? Yes. So you can see basically the whole city's layout is surrounded and shaped by the university. Same as in St. Andrews University as well. So that's very important, and hopefully that will help us understand, okay, what role Melbourne University could play in Melbourne's economic growth. Any question? Good. So week 10, group work. Well, we go straight away to presentation in week 10. So you need to form a 3 to 4 people group and start preparing your group work. So let's say that's your presentation skills. So last year I have, I think, 5 or 6 groups, and 5 of them did actually go out, collect data. I think one group even did some interview with a co-working space. And they did a fantastic presentation. They collect data during reading week, I'm afraid, so there's no actually another week free for you to collect data. So you have to form your group earlier and start think about what cases you want to study and plan the responsibilities among yourself. Okay. After week 10, we will then move on to look at different spaces. Week 11, Europe and North America. So here I have a guest lecturer as well, who is from the UK. Week 12, Asia, maybe focusing on China and maybe touch upon Japan. And week 11 is Latin America. So here again I have a guest lecturer from Chile. He will share his experience here. So that's the structure of my subject. Okay? That's how I structured it, how different classes related to each other, and what kind of skills I want you to develop. My question for you. In the piece of paper, because I need to summarize it for next week, write down your academic background, which university you're from, what's your bachelor degree, extra, or what's your hobby, whatever you want me to know. Then write down what topic you think are most difficult, most relevant, and most interesting. Then the last one, also important to me, I want you to tell me what topic you want me to include in the session. Because there is flexibility. So if you give me suggestions, I can bring some extra topics in the session. Okay? Now, 10 minutes? Enough? Write down these questions for me. So there are 17 of you. I need to collect 17 pieces of paper afterwards. Anyone want piece of paper? Whoa. I might not have enough pen though. We can see whoever. You might need to borrow a pen from your colleagues. You can write down your name or keep it anonymous. Doesn't matter. Okay, remember the question? Your academic background, then within the session, most difficult, most relevant, and most interesting. Then what else you want me to cover? Let's see. You two can share one. Cut it half maybe. Okay, everyone remember the question? Yeah, we'll go back to the session. Or actually, if you have any particular question for me, you can also write it down on the paper. Do you need a pen?
Use a whiteboard marker.
Huh?
Yeah, pen.
I do have a pen. See, we are quite a small class. You can just shout out.
Thank you.
Wait. And after this, you can take 10 minutes break.
What's the questions again? It's what you like most, sweetheart. There you go.
Okay, now it's 9:33. We will come back. We will start next session 9:45. Okay? After this, you can go out, have some fresh air, get yourself a coffee. Good. you haven't finished answer the question. Do you go out, have some fresh air? Yeah, I don't want you to fall into sleep next week, next session. Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much. Just stay here. It's fine. There's two missing, or unless someone signed in but hasn't been here, wasn't there. Okay. Anyway. Okay, so maybe we can start. So thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. Last slides, a size assessment. So 3 components. First one is like a theory, like a literature review, basically, due on the 6th of April, and then presentation. You do have to upload your group presentation a day before the presentation. Yeah, just remember that. Without the upload version, I will not give you a mark. Okay, so the presentation is on the 5th of May. So upload your presentation on the 4th of May. Okay, and the last one is an individual assignment. 9th of June. Any questions? Okay, good. So the marking criteria, I think I have the marking criteria in the course handbook. You just need to have a look. Good. So, no question? We move on to the main course of the subject today. Oh, by the way, I do have 2 kind of notes. First thing is, if there's no tutorial, as you can see on the handbook, I think we have 3 tutorials throughout the 12 weeks time. So if there's no tutorial, we only do lecture for 2 hours, so 9 to 11. I try to finish by 11. Okay. Then the second thing is, I don't like you to talk among yourself. There are a lot of discussion opportunities. I do want you, if you have a question, to speak out, or even ask questions directly to your classmates, but don't talk among yourself. Like, okay, I hate that. Okay, so the focus, remember at the beginning, I said the focus of section 1 is to introduce the basics, i.e. what is knowledge economy, why it is important, what are the key theories that has been used to explain knowledge economy. I don't think I have time to cover cities, why cities is important, the latest debate on global cities, city ranking, and the measure of success. But all the course slides will be available on LMS. You can have a read. So the first one, driver of change, knowledge economy, and innovation. According to OECD study on the rise of knowledge economy, they believe economic success is increasingly based upon the effective use of intangible assets, such as knowledge, skills, and innovative potentials as a key resources for competitive advantage. So the term knowledge economy is used to describe this emerging knowledge structure. So here, the term I want to explain is intangible assets. So that is the opposite term to tangible. Tangible assets, which has a physical presence, such as labor, land, capital, money. You invest in the investment. But what's the emphasis in the knowledge economy is something intangible, has no physical presence. Something in your mind, your knowledge, the skill you learned, and the innovation skills. A good example here, tangible asset you have is your brain. these are the creative process. So these are the tangible assets you have as a student. Okay? Any question? Good. So what exactly is knowledge economy? Maybe described as a part of the economy where organizations generate wealth by using knowledge specialism in their workforce. Use your intangible set of your workforce. That's knowledge economy. So the term knowledge-based industry usually refers to those industries which are relatively intensive in their inputs of technology and or human capital. Another term, human capital. Have you heard the term before? Yeah? So why they say human capital, I mean wrong, anyway, instead of labor? What's the difference between the two? Why they start using human capital? Yes. Why they use human capital instead of labor? Yeah.
Like it's a global workforce as opposed to kind of labour, which is kind of
Fixed in local area.
yeah, whereas I think in the knowledge economy, kind of workers, creative workers, whatever, can kind of choose where they want to work.
More mobility.
There's more agency.
Yes. Yeah.
Labor can be achieved through technology like robots and other things, but human brain is unique thing. So you need to have human brains more as compared to physical labor.
Yes. Yes. That's both are very good explanation. Here the difference lies in capital. If you are investor, think about if you are in property sector. If you're an investor, you want to invest your capital $1, you don't want to get $1 return. That's not a good investment. Yeah? You want to have profit. So human capital is the same. Instead of compared to labor, where you get a fixed, well not fixed, maximum amount of output you can get out from a labor's work. 8 hours, you might get like 100, 800 or something of toys. For human capital, when you're investing in this labor force, you are expecting to get more out of them. Okay? So that's why when we gain knowledge in university, in the future your employee hoping that by hiring you, you can generate more than they pay you. That's human capital. A related term to human capital is social capital. Has anyone heard about that? No? Similar, think about capital. So something you invest in, you will get more. So here you invest in your social relationship. Think about community. If no one knows each other, you don't interact with each other. You're just individual. But
Is that like corporate culture?
more like networking, the effect of networking. Yeah, you cannot gain by talking to other people, collaborating with other people. By knowing your neighbor, you might be able to get your neighbor drive you. Like if you have an emergency, you might get your neighbor to help you if you don't talk to your neighbor. Yeah? Similar to that. So that's why we use capital to emphasize the difference with traditional labor force. That's what I mean by labor on top and human capital. Okay? Now, we know what is knowledge economy. We know what is knowledge-based industry. Any examples you can think of knowledge-based industry? ID.
It's like science, is it?
Yeah, I think general physical physics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. All the easy answer has been city management become more and more knowledge-based. That's true. Very good. I'll let you off. Good. Design. Yeah. Getting using more and more sophisticated technologies, softwares. Yeah. manufacturing, for example, you can also say that's knowledge.
Is it anything that has like intellectual property? Industries that are based on intellectual property?
Well, that's quite a narrow definition, I would say,
Yeah.
based on just intellectual property. It's actually much wider than that, especially nowadays. Seems everything you need to have some innovation, some knowledge input into it. I think knowledge-based economy is getting much wider these days. Some example here. Question 2, how about service sector? Do we say service industry also knowledge-based?
Yes.
Anyone think it's no?
I agree.
Agree, yes. Yeah? Okay, yes. So, not everything though. For people serving waitress in a restaurant, we won't say that's knowledge-based. Yeah. So here it's desirable to include other service activities that are intensive users of high technology and or have the relatively highly skilled workforce. So OECD does have a kind of category here. So you have communications, finance, insurance, real estate, congratulations, and business service. So property students are in a high-tech service, knowledge-based service activity. Then community, social, and personal service. I would think planning can roughly belong to social service here. So it's, again, I think it's once you have a definition or classification of something, you tend to risk losing out something. So it's still, I think, it's debatable definition here. Then the key discussion here is, what do you think about some traditional industries, like mining? Australia has 80% of export coming from mining and agriculture. Do we think mining is knowledge-based? No?
It depends. So do you consider skill as a knowledge? If skill is a knowledge, then almost every industry in the world is knowledge-based.
Well, I think some parts of the mining
Is it expertise?
expertise, yeah, actually in terms of, okay, knowledge of knowing the process, even refining in the mining industry is actually quite high-tech based. And also for mining industry, you have some basic, just digging out the minerals. That's labor intensive, but then you can processing it to sell those high value added products. You can even sell your service to other companies. Mining related service. That's Australian is actually quite good at that. So yes, traditional industry can be knowledge based as well. Depends on what activity and what stage of the industry we are talking about.
Even digging requires some set of skills. So would you consider that as a knowledge?
No, normally not. You can say
It's a
become
physical
more.
activity.
You can say become more capital intensive because digging now use more and more sophisticated tools, and our what labor needs to learn operating this tool. Yeah? But behind digging, you do have another group of labor who has to analysis this area has a higher chance of finding minerals, so that's labor, that's knowledge intensive. Digging itself might not be. So I would say the boundary is not very strictly defined. We just know so kind of wider nowadays. Okay, some of the figures show you the growing importance of knowledge-based industry. So across OECD and the United States, in the 1980s, they contribute about 20%, 90s, 30%. Nowadays, not high-tech sector contribute more than 50% of GDP in the major OECD economy. I don't have an updated figure here. Also, we tend to observe a close correlation between your knowledge intensity of a country and its GDP per capita, as shown by this line. So for the Knowledge Economy Index, so this index is calculated by the World Bank, and it's based on scores coming from 4 pillars of knowledge economy. First one is an economic and institutional regime or system to provide incentives for the efficient use of existing and new knowledge and the flourishing of entrepreneurship. A good example here is the Bay-Dolly, is that right pronunciation? Or you can, I think it's Bay-Dolly Act in the United States, which came into force in the 1980s. So what this act do? A key change made by this act was in the procedure by which federal contractors, individuals, who acquired ownership of inventions could ownership of inventions made with federal funding could return that ownership. Before this act, if you get funding from the federal government, the ownership, the IP goes to the federal government. What they want to use with it, or whether they will use your IP, don't know. Personally, and your institution won't get any financial benefit. But because this act, it's enabling universities and some small companies to retain the title to invention and make lead in patenting and licensing their discoveries. So that's really boosting the passion of university staff and small entrepreneurs. So as you can see here, total number of US patents as a green, the blue bar, and the yellow one is the number of US patents rely on federal funding, and then the line shows the rise of the percentage rely on federal funding. Since the 1980s, you can see the share has risen significantly because individuals and their institutions do have the motivation. We can actually get benefit from it. So that dramatically changed the innovation landscape of United States. Another booming period, if you notice, this area. So what's can you guess what's the background? Why there's a significant rise of patent activities?
After the Second War.
Yes, Cold War period. That's another booming period of patenting. And then during the war period as well. So that's the institutional support. Actually, I don't know the details for the act, whether individual control the patent or their institution. In Melbourne University, I know it's my university. If I invent something, I think the patent goes to the university, not myself. So actually, I might not be motivated, isn't it, to do any groundbreaking innovation. So the second pillar is a highly educated, skilled population. I think these days every country has paying attention to education, like especially Singapore, Japan, for example. So that's the share OECD employment trends in manufacturing and the service-based industry. So by compare these two figures, first thing we can see is that manufacturing has been declining across OECD, whereas service industry has been rising. But within manufacturing service, you can see the diversity here. Even within manufacturing, so that's the general total manufacturing blue line, those high and medium-high technology-based manufacturing reduced a little bit to the 1994, then start rise again. Whereas the low manufacturing, no technology one has been reducing continuously. Service, okay, that's the total service. What has been rising most dramatically is finance, insurance, real estate, community and social service, whereas wholesale retail, transport, storage, and communication service has a more smooth increasing line. So when I was looking at the figures, you can see it's due by 1995 for service-based industry in particular. Do you think there might be some change these days with the pattern of the growth?
Communication service would increase like Facebook and Instagram.
Well, not so much in terms of. I think communication technology has been so established. It's quite hard. You have a dramatic change of technology breakthrough to then lifting the particular sector again. Think about retail. Think about storage. Think about China. What's happening in China? Yeah. Sorry. Yes. I don't know whether if you search on Google Map, actually now the storage for this big retail service has grown dramatically. Like Taobao and anything else. The major Jingdong, for example. So they kind of promise, I don't know, like 1 day delivery or something delivery. Think about their nationwide retail center. That's massive. So with the growth of e-commerce in developing countries, I think Indonesia as well, that does stimulating the whole transport and storage sector to booming these days. Less so in developed countries. I don't know why. It's actually a quite interesting question why e-commerce hasn't been so much been taken up in, say, Australia, US, and European compared to developing countries. In Indonesia, it's so developed. I remember I was there. The last day I was there, I was thinking buying a coffee, but I was already going to the airport. So the lady, an Indonesian student, ordered something on app. Then the guy riding a motorbike, giving me 2 bags of coffee within, I don't know, half an hour. They can track where we are. So we are actually on our way to airport. So the guy was like chasing after us to deliver the coffee. I was like, God, it's even more, feels like it's even more efficient than China. Anyway, so another thing, okay, that's easier. So white-collar, high-skilled worker has been contributing to employment growth more significantly than other occupation sectors, especially in kind of mature economy, like Germany, United Kingdom, Italy, France. Whereas if you look at United States, Australia, and New Zealand, so their kind of other occupation category has also been increasing in, what's the time? Oh yes, in between 1980 and 1990s. Because if you look at the economic structure of Australia, for example, agriculture, mining do contribute quite a bit to its economic growth. So, and also Australia is big. It has enough population to support the self-consumption of agriculture sector. Whereas for these smaller countries, they do have to prioritize which industry activity they want to prioritize. The same with United States, which is so big, especially in central US, agriculture sector is still huge there. So it's kind of skill of space come into play here as well. Okay, that's second factor. Factor 3, efficient innovation system of firms, research center, university collaborating with each other. We have a separate class talk about innovation system. Last one, information and communication technology. For me, this technology is like the fundamental infrastructure nowadays for any country who want to return competitiveness in nowadays competition. If you don't have sophisticated ICT, it's going to be quite challenging for you actually to catch up in economic growth. Yeah. Okay, so these are the four pillars support the knowledge economy index. Now we go to the original idea of innovation. Trumpeter, a reasonably handsome gentleman. A quick quiz question. What, in your mind, are the key ideas of Trumpeter? So I have option from A to G. Have a read, have a guess, and think about, just random guess. What's Trumpeter's idea? Since you are new, join us. Do you want to give it a try?
Are there four correct answers?
Huh?
Are there four right answers?
Yeah, right answer. Which idea? What's your name?
James. A, C, E, and F.
Pretty reasonable. A, C, E, F. Okay. For a good try. I will have the answer later. How about you? Have a guess. B, B, C, E, and G. G. Yeah. Okay. Good. And how about you? Oh, random guess.
A, D, G, and E.
G. A, D, and
E and G.
E, and G. Okay. James, have you heard about Trumpeter before? Okay. Okay, so right answer is A and C. You're not too far away. So for E, actually, for the original, when Trumpeter started writing about innovation, he believes big companies are the driver. It's only toward the end, when he's going to die, he writes something else, then included small and medium companies. But nowadays, we do say small and medium companies are actually quite important for innovation. Between F and G, Trumpeter's idea is innovation is more important than invention for economic growth. Okay, now a bit more about the great man of Trumpeter. Yes, if I can get a play.
This man was the first to understand how capitalism really works. Joseph Alois Schumpeter.
He's without question one of the greatest and most original of economists.
Schumpeter is probably the only economist who really saw innovation as the driver.
My iPhone is the virtual embodiment of the idea of creative destruction that Schumpeter wrote about.
But Apple is just one example that shows how innovation can change the world.
Any industry that delivers poor service for a high price deserves to be disrupted.
Every technological revolution takes the whole economy up to a new level of productivity by transforming everything.
It's a vision that had only a few advocates at the beginning.
For a century and a half, only two figures focused centrally on the process of innovation as a driver of growth. And these were Karl Marx and Schumpeter.
At the same time, he was an eccentric and erratic individual.
He was a showman. He always made it clear that he came from somewhere else.
Schumpeter went around in carriages in Vienna with changing prostitutes, for example. He behaved improperly for ordinary bankers.
This film tells the life of a genius and puts his achievements into the context of today's most burning questions.
Before them was always chaos, dark, and now there is light and truth and lots and lots and lots of money.
Okay, quick introduction. So remember in the short video, they do mention two names who talk about innovation. Sorry? Besides Schumpeter, Karl Marx. Yes, Schumpeter, yes. So Schumpeter got his idea. He's inspired by Karl Marx. Karl Marx believed, so you all know Karl Marx, yeah? No. In China, that's the only theory we learned, actually, Karl Marx theory. So really, so Karl Marx believed when the conflicts in capitalism development reaching a certain level, there's no way to solve these conflicts. That's become the driver to destroy capitalism and leads to socialism, communism. Okay, but Schumpeter believed that these conflicts is not always unsolvable because innovation, because of this creative destruction process that gave capitalism a certain period of time to relax these conflicts inbuilt into the system, to give it. So you have this cycle of economic growth. So that's the period when economic goes to downturn. That's when the conflict is accumulating. That also provides opportunity for creative destruction to happen. Yeah. So people don't want the system to die. So they start innovation. So that gives the economy another boost to another growth cycle. So that's his contribution. It's like building upon Karl Marx. So the key idea of creative destruction refers to the old way of doing things indigenously, internally, being destroyed and replaced by new ways. It happens when the business cycle is in its downturn. So the old beliefs, the old established system has become like cannot be sustained and become problematic. So that is also when entrepreneur become very active. They sense opportunity. Yeah, and also it's kind of almost easier for them to break through. Think about the established system. You have so many barriers when the economy is booming. So many barriers for you to break through. But when all these established system shows they have problems, that's something new might happen at that period of time. Okay, so that's his idea. Give you another example of creative disruption with example of the icing industry.
Hello, I'm Philip Quello. I'm an economic historian at Ball State University. Today I'm here to talk about creative destruction. Economists talk a great deal about the term creative destruction. Creative destruction is a centerpiece for modern thinking about how economies evolve. But what is creative destruction? It seems somewhat of an oxymoron. Well, not quite. Creative destruction is an economic principle that an economist, Joseph Schumpeter, observed in 1942. The opening up of new markets, foreign or domestic, the organizational development from the craft shop and factory illustrate the same process of industrial mutation that incessantly revolutionizes the economic structure from within, incessantly destroying the old one, incessantly creating a new one. process of creative destruction is the essential fact about capitalism. It is what capitalism consists of and what every capitalist concern has got to live in. What do you mean by that? Step back a second and see if what Schumpeter said over 70 years ago can still be applied today. Take the ice industry in the United States, for example. Ice production has had a very interesting and unique history over the past several hundred years. Today, Americans consume tens of thousands of tons of ice every day. Ice consumption has become a regular part of the American daily life, as ice has hundreds of uses, including keeping food and drinks cold and icing injuries. Ice has not always been this readily available to the average person. Back in the 16th century, wealthy individuals would build personal ice houses on their property, cutting ice from nearby lakes and ponds in the winter months and transporting them to ice houses, storing it for use during the summer months. The commercial ice trade then began around 1800 in the United States. Large-scale ice mining operations sprang up, concentrated mostly in New England. These ice producers transported ice throughout the United States and much of the Caribbean. By 1818, ice was fetching nearly 25 cents per pound in the United States. That seems kind of affordable, 25 cents per pound. Well, compare that with what ice costs today. Ice currently costs about 10 cents per pound, even though we've seen inflation approximately 1,800% since then. The average income per capita in the United States in 1818 was $1,919 per year. Comparing that with the United States today, it is $49,965. What does it mean? Well, if we look at the price of ice as a percentage of income today compared to 1818, we found that 1 pound of ice took more than 65 times more income in 1818 than it does today. That is, if you buy ice commercially. In-home ice production is even cheaper. This means that in 1800s, ice could only be afforded by the wealthiest of individuals, and even then only in a limited capacity. Well, now that we've established how much cheaper ice is than it was 200 years ago, let's look at how many people are employed in the industry over the years. In 1914, near the height of the commercial ice industry, there were more than 2,500 companies producing ice, employing approximately 30,000 Americans. Then in 1950, the automatic ice maker was developed. By 1965, its use was widespread throughout the United States. This innovation dramatically changed ice production and the commercial ice industry. Today, the ice industry is vastly different. The majority of ice is now being produced by personally owned ice makers. With the onset of home ice makers, thousands of ice workers lost their jobs. Today, there are about 500 commercial ice producers that employ just over 7,000 workers. That is more than a 75% decrease in employment in the ice industry from 1914 to today. This is creative destruction on full display in the modern day. The massive ice industry of the early 1900s was replaced through innovation, and now we enjoy a much higher standard of living because of it, consuming more ice at a lower price and a higher quality than we ever have had before.
Okay, stop here. Actually, I have another story to share with you on the creative destruction process. Remember in the first video, they mentioned about example of Apple. Actually, before Apple started getting popular in the 1990s, mid-1990s, there are other several giant mobile phone producers dominating the market. Any of you still remember their name? Huh? Yeah, Nokia. Another one?
Sony Ericsson.
Sorry, say that again.
Sony Ericsson.
Yep, Sony Ericsson. And, well, it's not actually so big compared to another one. There's another one.
Was it BlackBerry?
Yeah. I think it was popular in the European market only. Motorola, yes. So actually it's Motorola and Nokia dominating the global market. Actually last year I did visit Nokia's factory. It's quite sad because I think it's at its peak time, Nokia's factory almost dominating 30% of the land use in Finland. And now it's all concentrated to one kind of giant headquarters in a place called some little town outside the capital of Helsinki. And later I did read a story about Nokia. I think actually the touch screen idea came out from an employee in IKEA, in Nokia. But because Nokia was so established and so successful at that time, his idea is simply being dismissed because the company believe people still prefer the keyboard, reliable, kind of. I think reliable and quality are still the features customer prefer. I don't know how Apple just got this idea of touchscreen and just get on the market immediately. So IKEA, I think Nokia tried to catch up by introducing. I don't know if you have seen the first model he produced, a touchscreen with the keyboard. It's like almost like PlayStation thing, but just couldn't catch up with Apple. So it's a bit sad when I visited his headquarters, like looking at. But anyway, creative disruption. Another key idea emphasized by Schumpeter is the importance of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs. They offer the scale of creative disruption. They replace in whole, in part, inferior offering across market industry, and at the same time, they create new products, new business models, or new combinations of currently existing input. So these people have a sharp eye. They can notice the gap or the future change of taste in the current market, and they are not afraid of failure. For me, I think entrepreneurship is quite a culture thing as well. If you go to Silicon Valley, you have a large proportion of people who like to take risk. They don't mind having a big debit if their business model doesn't work. But if you go to quite a lot of other countries, you find actually you need a push actually underneath the culture element as well. One thing I noticed is actually the big entrepreneur wave in Indonesia, if you have ever been there, with a lot of small media companies, especially by students in universities. I talked to a young girl, I think 18 or 17. She was already thinking about setting up an app company with some classmates. She just told me many of her classmates already either having their company or in the stage of preparing. I don't understand why suddenly Indonesia just get on the wave so quickly, whereas China, the Chinese government has been pushing, supporting entrepreneurship. I haven't seen. It's kind of wave thing. When the policy is giving a lot of beneficial policy like incentives, yes, there's a peak. Very quickly will die off for some reason. It's another kind of interesting topic to explore further. Then the last thing, emphasized by entrepreneur, emphasized Schumpeter, is innovation. It is a result of entrepreneurship and different from invention. For Schumpeter, there are 3 stages where the creative destruction process really happens. First one is the invention. That is a conceive a new idea process. You can think about it as you inventing a prototype, but you haven't been able to sell it yet. You haven't generating financial return. Innovation is a process you generating return for your idea. Okay, and you put together all the economic requirement, market requirement to implement the invention. So you have sold your prototype. And last thing is diffuse. So if you just have one product, sold in your local market, that's small impact. You do want your invention to spread out across the country, internationally, like Apple. That's when you have the disruption happening. Okay, so small scale or just one transaction. Doesn't make much change. Example here, Xerox photocopier was invented by this guy, a patent attorney who was frustrated by the difficulty of copying legal documents. So he tried many years with a friend and successfully photocopied a phrase in 1938. That is invention. But at that time, no industry or government interested to invest in. It was until 1944, two companies, a non-profit, another company, showed interest, and they invest in the prototype for further development. Hewlett, which later became holding the patent, announced the successful development of a first photocopier in 1948. But the first commercially available copier was not sold until 1950. That's when innovation happens. You successfully transaction it on the market. After another 60 million investment in developing the photocopier, the Xerox 1915 became the first simple push-button plain paper copier, become an immediate success and earned cost more than 150 million as a return. And after that, you have the diffusion process happen. In the following years, competing companies start copying, other inventions start use a similar concept, such as fax machine. So that's diffuse happen. That's the whole process. Invention, innovation, diffuse. Remember also when I mentioned this excuse me, this name. That patent act in America, this one, Bay-Dolly Act. Remember that act. So before this act, a lot of the university inventions stop at the invention stage, or being kept by the federal government. It was until that act allowed you to realize the commercial value, it significantly stimulates innovation and diffusion process. Any question so far? No? Good. You are all smart students. Okay. Last session in today's class, I will introduce 4 economic models that talk about technology progress, spatial structure change, and macroeconomic growth. So the relationship between the 3 are complicated and have been explained in 4 separated fields of economics. The first one is endogenous economic growth model. Anyone has economic background? Okay. So endogenous economic model, it internalizes technology change in the growth theory. If you are familiar with the classical economic theory, the model goes output is only related to capital investment and labor, and alpha and beta are the substitute rate between the two. That's the classic economic model. What the endogenous model did is add that's technology change indicator. In this simple model, Romer assumed A is a positive constant that reflects the level of technology in a particular economy. And he kept K and labor in the model. He believes that for-profit private investment in research and development, R&D refers to research and development, is a driver underpinning this positive constant, underpinning A. That's why A exists. Private companies want to get extra profit out of the investment. He also assumed that knowledge spillover are essential and almost happening immediately. Why? Because again, he doesn't allow A to change, spatially and timely. So that means if you have one happens in one place is being diffused immediately to the whole national economy or local economy. So that keeps a constant. No need to change. Of course, you can relax the consumption to take into account the diffusion speed by changing the A. But that's, you can, if you're interested, you can read a little more on the economic model. When the economic is in equilibrium situation, that means your input in capital and labor are constant. You have already maximized their investment. Per capita increase, per capita growth of the national economy equals the level of your technology. Okay, so that's why you can say, okay, US has grows faster by saying technology level is actually better, especially for mature economy. But well, all this discussion is just for your kind of general understanding. You don't need to know a bit more in depth. So the problem is it has a simplest explanation of technology progress. Also, Romer didn't talk about anything about geography. Doesn't talk about anything about space, how space could influence the model. So in that sense, his model has little relevance to planning, to property, for example, and to urban studies. That's a limitation here. But why should we care about space? Why space could influence the model? Anyone have an idea? Oh, we are all becoming tired. Do you want to try it? See, you are the tired.
Well, I feel like it's got something to do with like population and geography of people, where people are, and source of demand. I feel like it's just ignoring the fact
Source of demand,
that there's no that's assuming that there's an equal demand for the output.
Yeah. And the speed of diffusion is so quick, isn't it? Yes, that's the key reason. Not bad. So why should we care about space? First of all, transport cost that influence the diffuse of a particular invention. But like I said, you can incorporate transport cost in kind of A by adding a parameter to show how quickly A can change or catch up. But another thing, importantly, Romer didn't consider is a collaboration externalities. Anyone heard about that before? Yeah, good. A key concept in economic geography. All the slides will be online, so sorry I just uploaded it a bit late. Okay, agglomeration economics, or you can call it external economic skill, refers to the benefit that individual companies could obtain by locating near to each other. Okay, so in a simple model, that is the dynamic of external economic of skill. So where are the sources of this external economic? You have expertise in the industry, because once you have a cluster of specialized supplier customers come near to you, that will reduce the transportation cost, buy input and sell to your customer. Okay, as simple as that, reduce the transport cost. But more importantly, you tend to attract a pool of very skilled labor in that particular area. Think about Silicon Valley. People don't worry about getting fired because they can easily find another job almost next door to it. But that also reduces your labor hunting cost for individual companies. Yeah? Because you know, okay, this guy has worked in my neighbor company. He's already trained and well developed. I can just use him immediately. So that reduces your company cost. That's another important driver. Third thing is investment in particular infrastructures. So if your cluster, if your particular area specializes in a particular sector, say medicine, you can actually pull resources together to invest in a particular very expensive instrument. Then companies share the use of it and share the cost of it, reduce kind of cost to individual company. Then the last thing is the knowledge related to your sector, or in the word of what's his name? Okay, we'll come back to whoever comes with the term. He used the term the secret of the industry just in the air. It's hard to tell because it's hard to say, but you can feel it because you are so close to other companies, other employees, and your competitors, your suppliers. You are continuously bumping into each other, so you know the trend of the industry almost immediately. If you read the paper by Freeman, who writes about the fashion industry in New York, she talked about the secret of the industry. So people just continuously by buying a coffee, you might have a conversation with another company who talking about, oh, actually there's a new trend happening in Paris. Maybe we should catch up or something. So that's the secret. You just catch it up by being there. That's another reason why external economic skill happens. So that's the diagram showing. The green line is marginal cost for individual companies, but by locked in near to each other, that reduce your marginal cost substantially down a different level. So external economic skill different from internal economy. Oh, sorry, different from economy of skill for individual company. Okay, that's the first line we were talking about. Economy of skill. That means if you're a small company, you still have to invest in labor, land, capital. So your marginal costs are significantly higher than the large companies whose marginal cost is lower. That's internal economy of skill. Okay. Okay, as long as you know this is the difference. So we talk about internal economy. That's because when you move from being small to big, your marginal cost of production is reduced. But here we are talking about external economy. It's not related to your individual company. It's related to the whole sector, like whoever is in that cluster. Okay, so it's reduced the whole line by a different level. Okay. Any question? Good. I know you are smart students, you must understand it. But the question here is, do you think all places could have external agglomeration economy? What's your why?
There's other factors like quality of roads and accessibility that influence, like if you're a transport place.
Well, yes, there are a lot of actual discussion why a particular agglomeration happen in a particular place. So that related to, for example, nature resources. If you're a mining industry, you have to go somewhere with mineral, isn't it? So that nature industry. Second thing might be a university. Say Melbourne University is so good in medicine, so you do see a lot of big medicine companies come to here. So we are building a medicine quarter or something near Melbourne University. University can be a big enter there. Then some other reason just unknown, by accident, but they just because of the increasing return, they do stay there and get more company coming there. So that's another kind of a gap currently in the literature why a particular cluster exists. No one has been able to explain in full the reason. So this is a kind of map show you a specialized cluster in different parts of United States. As we can see, New York is a dense population publishing, multimedia, fashion. Then you have Silicon Valley area as microelectronics, but not everywhere. You can see quite a lot of the large space in the middle of America actually don't have anything, don't have any specialized cluster. Okay, so what does that imply? It implies that even for a country, for a city, your economic growth is not universal. Some places will get developed faster and better than others. Yeah, different factors might contribute to that pattern, but it's just a consequence. That's also what interested me when I did my PhD study. I do notice in China, along the coastline, you have all the province grows much faster than central and the west. So I do want to understand why central China hasn't been able to catch up. So that's kind of the background of my study. Okay, move on. Remember in the first one, the indigenous economic theory doesn't talk a lot about geography. Then we have the second school, geographical economics. Here the emphasis is again on economics. Here are generally two schools here. First one is New Economic Geography, led by Krugman. I think he won the Nobel Economics Prize. And the second one is Evolutionary Economics. So for the first one internalized spatial economic structure into its economic model process. For me, I think this one is quite complicated. If you read Krugman's general introduction to New Economic Geography, it's straightforward, quite easy to understand. But once you go into his economic model, it becomes really challenging unless you are kind of very good with model. So I just introduced some of the general idea here. In the New Economic Geography, the key idea is agglomeration economic. So that means you can achieve increasing return for companies. Remember in the new classical and the classical model, the return is either constant or diminish. Because the argument is once you reach a certain level, once you reach the optimal skill of production, your marginal costs start to increase and your benefits start reduce. That's the classic economic model. But New Economic Geography argues that by being in a specialized cluster, company can actually achieve continuously increasing return for long term. So that's the one big argument. The consequence of that is geographically, you tend to see a monopolistic competition because companies tend to move. If this is an original cluster, companies tend to move here, then you get this one growing bigger and bigger, and other smaller centers spread around it. So you tend to have one center, economic center, dominating the geographical structure. So another term, this theory emphasizes, I think it's quite interesting, is cumulative causation. Again, this is an observation, but actually, I think it does explain quite a lot. Just by the word translation, that means if you are good, you grow better. If you're bad, you're getting worse. Especially in the free market condition. Yeah. So that means it's actually become harder and harder for less developed economies, region cities to catch up, which is still the case. Yeah. Anyone has question here? Yeah.
Is agglomeration of economies only limited to physical constraint of geography?
Yes, I think so. I think agglomeration economy now.
Agglomeration could be connected. The important part of agglomeration economy is the communication.
Well, I will will explain that later because actually there is evidence physical proximity is still very important.
Because this new technology world is reducing the gap between two things by non-physical. Yeah.
Great question. Be patient. I have a slide to explain that later. So here with the cumulative causation for less developed economies, you either have a shock into your economy, or you invest in, or you have, if you want to have a leap forward development, you have to actually specialize, invest dramatically on some particular local asset to help you catch up. Singapore is a good example here by investing in infrastructure to start with, and now human capital. I couldn't think of anything else, but anyway. But the problem with this one is technology change is not explained, so why we have continuous increasing of more sophisticated technology. And so I think that's the main criticize of this theory. The second one, evolutionary economic geography. The top half is the traditional evolutionary economics. Basically means because you have, it's getting longer and longer. Because you have this agglomeration economy, you tend to have a lock-in in a particular industrial path. What that means is that because once you specialize in one industry sector, your economy tends to be dominated by, like say, suppliers, demand, labor, infrastructure, all supporting that particular industry. But think about when this industry is going downturn. Think about manufacturing. Think about like port activities, for example, in the UK, in the 1980s, Liverpool, Manchester, Bristol, all rely on economic growth with port-related activities. So their labor are very much specialized in that industry. But when the port function is moved away, the whole city economy is kind of collapsed. So once you specialize, it becomes very hard for you to break away from this path. Okay, you not only have the labor, you have also the policy, the institution, the legal system even, and the culture, all supporting that particular specialization. That's when you become locked in a particular path of growth. Yeah, so that the danger is once you pass the peak development period, it's hard for your economy to diversify. Understand? So you nodding. Good. But what the new development of evolutionary economy is the second half. So this is the first half. Your path becomes stabilized, and you start develop a local industry, technology, institution, a legal system to support that particular path, which then become a constrained environment for the future when shocks happen. But the new argument is that actually the path can be a dynamic process through conversion, layering, and recombination process. So instead of being locked in a particular path, a local economy can actually be very clever, but be like monitoring which other technology are being developed, supporting different technologies, so keep a certain level of diversity in their local economy. So what happened is adaptation of local industry technology and enabling environment for to keep evolving along with the future. It's just if you're interested, you can read a bit more by Ron Martin's paper in this area. Almost finished. Okay. as a third stream, geography of innovation. Remember the first one, the geographical economics emphasizes on economics. The third one emphasizes on geography. That will go to your question, why physical space is still relevant. So here, this school pays particular attention to the spatial extent of knowledge flow. Whether ICT means that, whether development ICT means that we are free from funding in a particular area. The funding is that, here the key contribution from this theory is a distinguish between codified and tactic knowledge. Remember earlier on when I introduced knowledge economy, I mentioned intangible and tangible asset.